there's always more to the story. Join your hosts, Dr. Eric Shaw, prosecutor Ryan Frank, writer Adrian Bonenberger, and comedian Ryan Connor as they follow up on the most recent episode of Baggage. This is Carry On.
Welcome, everybody, to Carry On, the supplemental episode to Baggage. This is the first take I've done at this intro. That's why Ryan's laughing.
Can I cut you off here and just do an impression
Sure.
of you doing an intro of the show?
Sure.
Welcome.
I didn't forget
welcome
English.
to everyone. Welcome to everyone. Baggage. The show is the. Wait, did I say that? No, I'll do it again. Welcome to the Baggage, everyone. It's the show time. Eric is Eric. Ryan's here too.
I'm sorry if public speaking
after you do
is
the
part of
intro,
my profession.
After you do the intro, it's all fluid the whole time.
Yep.
It's so fluid after the intro, and you just it's like a golfer with the yips. Where you,
Yeah. Anyway, welcome to Carry On.
I swear, if you cut that out, you're in trouble.
No, I'm gonna cut out the yips in the beginning, and it'll go
Okay.
right to you. Oh, yeah. Welcome to Carry On, supplemental episode to Baggage. And the last episode we had was with Russ Hamilton, a corrections officer that had worked at several different places, but including San Quentin. And one of the stories I want to start off with, I actually did a little bit of research. One of the stories he shared was the death of an inmate from a shooting, and apparently it was very widely covered. And there was a civil suit, and the correctional San Quentin settled the suit, not admitting any fault whatsoever. There was an allegation that the inmate was targeted, which, I mean, just logistically, shooting from a tower, multiple shots, and the third shot's the second or third shot is it doesn't make any sense anyway. But they ended up settling that suit, so it was kind of a widely publicized
What
case.
didn't make sense there? Can you give a little more context?
Just, not that I have any specialized knowledge, but in the military, trying to shoot from a distance, 50 yards plus, using live rounds, he did do warning shots. There's no question he did warning shots. And then one shot ended up striking his head. That doesn't seem like a conspiracy that they wanted the guy to die. And they're going to wait until he starts attacking a prisoner in the courtyard. So it just seemed like it is as Russ explained it. It was a really terrible set of circumstances, but the family of the deceased had a different version, so they ended up settling out of court for much money.
And if anyone doesn't remember the episode, didn't hear it, he said that the guards are outnumbered by a ratio of 100 to 1 there, which is why the sort of threat of lethal force has to be there.
Right. And San Quentin being one of those like max facilities where not all of them are like that. He explained that, how you have different levels. But when you have the one of the things I like how he explained was the classification where you have, nonviolent offenders aren't at San Quentin. They're not. You got to get there. And when we got to that stage, it's way less about rehabilitation and a lot more about these are some really bad dudes that we need to keep out of society for a little while. And when you have those level of guys, the worst of the worst, there's some things that they only respond to as violence and the threat of ultimate violence. So, and it's interesting. I wonder how many correctional facilities in the country actually have live rounds. It's probably not too many.
I wish Adrian was here for this comment. I think he'd appreciate it. Historically, there's been kind of a philosophy with some of the generals in World War I and World War II of the more brutal you could be, the faster the war would be over. And so it justified a lot of the kind of war crimes and things. I kind of took that away from the approach that they have in these prisons there of just like, it has to be this brutal because if it's not, it's worse and it will just get worse. And it just struck me as just how hard that lifestyle has got to be. And Russ was one where like, man, that dude is definitely a hammer and nail type problem guy. Where like it struck me for so many of our guests, there is baggage and there is emotional trauma. And that guy was just hard everywhere. And I was impressed by everything he'd been through, but it just gave me such perspective about like the the world that he lived in there and how hard it was in those jail systems and the reasoning behind it was for everyone's safety.
Yeah, and getting into the psyche to the point of what you said, getting into the psyche and understanding the inmates would perceive the lack and the unwillingness to respond with force as weakness, and they would jump on it and capitalize on it. Is a mentality that few people, I think, understand if you're not in that system. So he wasn't one of those guys. Russ wasn't one of those guys. He was one of the guys trying to do the right thing, as shown by where he is now in his career working with rehabilitation. But he still had to understand that, which is just, and then turn it off when you go home and have dinner with your family. It's a hard thing to do. It really is a really fascinating career that people just don't, I think, appreciate. People appreciate firefighters and cops and all that. They see them, they know it's hard, but they like that correction officers are doing the hard stuff on a daily basis. And just, again, I said it in the episode, I equate it to PTSD in a war zone. It's one of those rare jobs that are like that.
Mm-hmm. I've never been a prison guard.
No?
No. You don't
I've
say.
known you since college, and I don't remember that. So maybe before college you were? I don't know. Maybe I missed that part.
It was between the house painting job and the first writing job.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been a prosecutor for 15 years now. I've been inside the walls of a jail.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been to jail, but I've been inside the walls, gone through the front door, like near a jail cell, twice.
Mm-hmm.
Once to visit friends, and once to interview a witness for the first time this year, just a month or two ago, I think. And I don't like it. It's just so.
Yeah, man. It's not a nice place. I'll say that. I'll say that my ex-wife, she did a lot of work in prisons, and I went with her to one of them, a women's prison here in California. Families of inmates. Right. This particular program was for mothers who are in prison because they can't see their kids face to face, and or you can't at all in jails. In some prisons, they have rules, even if you're a nonviolent offender. It's pretty messed up. But then in another research thing she did, I didn't want to say this when we were interviewing Russ, but yeah, she had an episode at San Quentin where she was interviewing someone in solitary confinement, and a guard put her in an extremely dangerous position. Where
really, like her own safety?
Oh yeah, like something where like she had to stop doing this. She was interviewing someone for this study for the University of California systems, when she was getting her PhD there, and anyway, this guy's not handcuffed, and she's locked in the cell in solitary, and the guard is supposed to be standing outside the door with his back to it, and she has a signal, and I think it's just verbal actually, and she notices that he has lowered his pants and is touching himself. And then, and maybe he had one hand cuffed. I can't remember, but he starts reaching for her, and she calls for the guard, and he doesn't come. But she does. She did it with some sort of code that the prisoner's not supposed to know, so they don't know there's a panic. And she tried to just stay calm, and she just kind of like keeps easing away and tries to keep her tone in the right way. But anyway, it was somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes for a guard to come, and she was doing the signal over and over and over again, and this guy was in prison for multiple rapes and murders.
Jesus.
Yeah. So anyway, they had to file a major complaint with the prison system over this.
That's terrifying.
I've had quite a few experiences, particularly in my early career, with jail like stuff, and I always just found it just incredibly unsettling and unpleasant on every level. When I was a paramedic, we would frequently have to pick people up usually from jails, never from, I don't think I ever went to a prison, but usually from the jails. The guys were all handcuffed. They were in their chains. We would chain them up to the cots and stuff. And usually a deputy would ride with us. In the hospital at MCV, they had a penitentiary floor for patients, I think it was. And like the elevator had to have a key system to like get you in and out of it. There was It was an old school hospital, like it was in cross shaped, and like each wing was locked, and there were guards protecting it there. And you had to everyone had to drop all their metal. You had to take your keys out. You couldn't bring anything, potentially dangerous in there. And then we go in and see these pictures. These guys are sick, like really sick, and we had to do all this stuff. I think I talked on my episode about the guy that had the faceotomy, and he was actually where they took a giant soft tumor out of his face, but he was a prisoner. And they, even despite the fact he was under anesthesia, they had a guard with him in the OR waiting the entire time just in case anything happened. But the wildest one that I had was when I did my psych rotation. I was in the Central State Mental Institute in the forensic wing. So these are people that were not stable enough to stay on trial. And that was fantastic. That was one of the best experiences I had in med school. This was true mental health pathology. These were people that were psychotic or manic and were having delusions, but there was also malingerers, there was sociopaths, there was people with suicidal ideation, and we saw just all sorts of pathology. But the thing that always stood out to me with that was another one where we had to go in through a single entrance. We had to go through a metal detector. You could bring a pencil in, but you couldn't bring pens in. You couldn't bring anything metal in. And then we would go and do the interviews with them. But the whole time there were these guards granted, this is a mental place. This is like a mental hospital in addition to the criminal aspect of it. There are guards in full riot gear at every corner, just waiting for things to pop off. And they did. And frequently we would see them just like four of them just carrying a dude screaming and freaking the fuck out down the hallway. And I remember them just beating the shit out of a guy once that it was like losing his mind. But I learned all sorts of interesting things about that rotation, like just the degree of sociopathy that's involved with some of the jail system. And this is one of my favorite little factoids. So most sociopaths, and so not psychopaths. Psychopaths do things that will do things out of proportion to things that are just exquisite, just really, really nasty serial killer stuff like that. Sociopaths are just they don't understand other people's feelings at all. They are pure narcissists. They only think about what I can do to get something, and they very frequently tend to do criminal stuff.
You said frequently, or you said infrequently?
Frequently, they very frequently end up doing criminal stuff. Because if you have no empathy and you have no feelings for anybody else, why wouldn't you steal something? So, but those people end up in two things happen to those people. One, they ultimately end up in jail for life. They finally go over just a bridge too far, end up in jail for life, or they stop. And what's interesting is why they stop. So the goal of any sort of psychology is to try to convince someone to want to stop or to want to do something, right? This is why we get paychecks. This is why we reward our children. This is why we give A's out of school. It's positive reinforcement, and it makes you want to do these things. Sociopaths don't respond to that. They absolutely respond to negative reinforcement, but in the weirdest way. So they will they don't stop wanting to do criminal stuff, but they ultimately get tired of being harassed and going to jail. And so they'll walk by a really nice car that's just open and the keys are there, and they go, I really want to steal that, but I just really don't want to go back to jail again. And it's just it's such a different mindset from the average person. I just found that absolutely fascinating. It's just such a different way of viewing the world, and being around those people kind of takes its toll on you. And I don't know how people can do that on a day-to-day basis, dealing with people that are just so aberrant and so awful and evil.
The caveat to that is most people that go to jail, because jails, incarcerated people, there's far more people in jails than there are prisons. Prisons, you've been sentenced long-term incarceration. And jails, I've said this all the time, are usually, there's a lot more dumb than there are dangerous. People that made mistakes, so they're short-term, things like that. And part of the job of prosecutors trying to separate.
To put it.
Well, no, I mean, most people that go to jail, it's like something that they regret. They get past it and have a productive life.
Yeah.
Hey listeners, quick question. Do you know what extraterrestrial radio signals and a mushroom from Texas have in common? Or what a number station is and why it's so haunting and creepy? If you're intrigued by those questions, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs has the answers.
Join us, Duncan and Shane, hosts, comedians, and best friends, on hilarious deep dives into obscure facts from science, history, and pop culture.
So whether you're nocturnal or just a fan of laughing and learning, we'll keep you entertained. Find Midnight Facts for Insomniacs wherever you're listening to this show.
One more story that kind of a tie into what you just said there. But going back to the same rotation, it was a young guy. He was like 19, 20 years old. And he told the most heartbreaking story about just absolute abuse at home, neglect, just every just awful thing you can imagine happened to him. And one night he locked everyone in the trailer and set it on fire and tried to kill his whole family. Nobody died. They got out, but he was there for attempted murder and he was now suicidal. As we go through this, I turn to my attending and I'm like, man, that was a rough story. It kind of makes you kind of feel for him, right? And he's like, yeah, except he did just try to murder his entire family. And so you got to remember, a lot of these guys are still very dangerous. And that's one that kind of like that kind of dichotomy of just like victim versus criminal. And sometimes the lines are a little bit blurry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's always that creeps into a lot of criminal cases. And it's like, okay, we have an explanation now. Child abuse, right? Child sexual assault. I am a cynic, so I question sometimes when a defendant all of a sudden alleges that they were the victim of child abuse. Now that we are 1 month away from trial, it's the first time it's coming up after you've done these horrible things. Doesn't get you out of it, right? You're still going to go to prison for what you did, but okay, history repeats itself, and that's some of it. But with the mental health stuff too, you've seen inherited. I had a case one time where the defendant was charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer, and it wasn't the most serious. It was a push situation, but he was probably having some kind of psychotic episode. But if he's behaving like that, like catatonic, maybe he's going to assault people. We don't know. You can't just say, well, rub my hands of it and set you free because we don't think you need to have a felony conviction for assaulting a law enforcement officer. We don't think that's a fair outcome. Fine. Well, the defense attorney said, hey, I don't think he's competent. We can't do anything. So he went to Central State, the place you just talked about, Eric, to get evaluated. And he stops eating and he isn't taking medication and he's starting to starve. And it's like, okay, they need to forcibly medicate him. We need a court order to forcibly medicate him to save this guy's life. Defense attorney says, no, we're gonna fight anything you try to do against his will. It's like, first of all, what's your job now at this point? You're fighting that. But we had to have a hearing on that. And his mom ends up testifying and crying. The defendant starts crying. He said, I had no idea. Like what I was doing. And he's like, I'll take medication. I'll do whatever. But why I brought this story up is what we had to do is separate him because his dad had a court case going on at the same time and couldn't be in the same holding cell area. They had to be on different floors because the dad was a violent schizophrenic and had his own charges stemming from that. The son, who was going through all of this, it was one of those early 20s manifestation, didn't have a lot of indicators of it. So the schizophrenic dad didn't know that his son had inherited his issues. We're worried about setting the dad off. Mom's dealing with this because she's talking to dad and talking to son, but can't tell the other one's in jail for their mental health stuff. It was just sad all the way around. And I've said it before. One thing that the criminal justice system does very poorly is deal with mental health.
I have so many good stories from that psych rotation. Every day was just a different wild one. But one, Ryan, you'll probably appreciate this with just the interactions of particularly the judge in this. This guy was, I don't remember if he was manic and psychotic or if he was schizophrenic, but either way, like the cocktail we were throwing at him was just not really working. And he was just constantly just way out in left field, belligerent, lots of still having psychotic thoughts. And the judge was getting pissed because he really wanted to take this guy to trial or do whatever it was. And he comes in to kind of like read us and the guy the riot act. And the attending's like, look, man, we're doing every can. He's like, I want to talk to him. He's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And he's like, I'm talking to him. And we're like, okay. And he goes in there and the judge is like, you need to get up, boy. You need to do this. You need to. And the guy just looks at him and is like, fuck you. And I'm not sure many people have told a judge to fuck themselves. But the judge's reaction was as you imagine a Southern judge might respond. And basically he was holding kind of like my attending responsible for this stuff. And we're just like, look, man, there's only so much we can do. But just watching this, like just guy at his rock bottom telling a judge right to his face to fuck you was kind of funny and also sad at the same time.
Well, I grew up with two people who I think were full-blown psychopaths. who I think would be in prison. I've looked them both up. I've tried to find it. I've tried to find them. Can't find them. One has a very common name and one I didn't know his last name. But there's just no, like you talk about like the symptoms, you know, they said the classic serial killer is, fires and killing animals and peeing the bed is the trio. This kid, I don't want to say his name, but his dad worked for my grandpa. And so sometimes when he was like a young teenager, like I don't know, maybe like 12 to 14, something like that, he'd be over at my grandparents' house. My grandma would be like, sort of watching him or something just because of this, work relationship. And he burned down several houses. We caught him killing a couple animals. No way he wasn't peeing in beds. I mean, this guy just looked like a bed pisser. And another kid who lived down the street from me in middle school, I'll say his school was shut down. He went to a private school that was shut down by the State Department after September 11th for being affiliated with Al Qaeda. Tried to choke me to death, and said some crazy terroristic things to me when I was in 7th grade, and I just had no idea what was going on. And I was like, okay. Never saw it. After the time he tried to choke me to death, I never saw him again. All right, stayed away, obviously. But anyway, there's no way both of these guys aren't either in the system or would be in the system if not for their,
Odds are probably pretty good. I mean, we've had those kids come through where they are at 12, 13, killing animals, burning animals, torturing animals and things like that. And it progresses to stuff with people like no motive whatsoever, harm to other individuals, sexual assaults of young children. And then they turn 17 and they go to the Department of Juvenile Justice or wherever they go. And after that, they don't come back to my jurisdiction. So I don't know, but the odds are not good.
No,
they are not going to commit pretty serious crimes.
Yeah, I believe in redemption for people, but it's people who have these traits, I do not see them turning around.
There are some things I believe in. We got to always try for rehabilitation, but there are some things where there are studies and the recidivism rate is really high. Sexual assault against minors, incredibly high. If you have not received sex offender treatment as a juvenile, if you're an adult and you get caught with some kind of sex offense, the odds of you committing another sex offense are stratospherically high.
Yeah, I bet.
I had a case recently that was really sad and frustrating from every aspect of it. And the boy, I think he's about 14 or 15 right now, but he has severe developmental delays and is mentally handicapped. He has basically the mind of about a 6-year-old, but he's in a 14, 15-year-old body. He's in special ed classes, but he would never be able to graduate. He will never be able to really function. But it's kind of a secondary problem with this. He has no self-control. He doesn't have ADHD, but he's still like a 6-year-old in his head. And so he tends to act spontaneously and do stupid things and says stupid things. And he can sometimes be aggressive. And it's not like he goes out of his way to pick fights or anything, but he just things have a way of escalating with him because he's basically a toddler in his head. And he butts heads with his I think it's his grandma as his primary caretaker, and he's hurt her several times. He gets into trouble around the neighborhood, and I just saw a report come through that he got cleared by the hospital to go to jail. And he'd run in with the cops several times before, but it was just so sad because we were trying. And the only real solution for him was some sort of like institutional group home that might be supportive and safe for him and safe for people around him. And he may make it there eventually, but the fact that he's probably going to go to jail for a while now, most likely for assault, is really saddening to me. I feel like he has just failed by the system. And I have been trying to work with this family for years. And I don't think there was anything that we could have done differently. They would have ended up with a different outcome. And it's just awful.
I mean, even a place like Colorado that's pretty liberal is probably lacking of inpatient regional mental health
There's
facilities.
None, and no long-term. I mean, that just doesn't exist anymore. There's no. I mean, you think about like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that was a warning against those type of facilities. But there needs to be something in between. We can't just let people out all the place. I mean, we have homeless people all the time, and all of them have extreme mental health problems, and we're just sweeping it under the rug or just ignoring it. And it's sad, top to bottom, society-wide.
This is the fun episode, guys. This is a fun episode.
We're not talking about 80s movies this time.
No. You missed that one, Ryan.
I was here for an 80s movie thing. We were talking about like the kids. The kids who went to space.
Yeah. We do it a lot. We did like a whole episode.
Oh, was another one?
That. Yeah. All we did was movies the whole time. That's what we just talked about movies. I think I called it the movies episode or something like that. Yeah. That's what we did. Yeah. Well, on that sad note, thanks for bringing us down, Eric. I think we'll end this episode. And Ryan, is there anything you want to plug?
Oh, yeah. December 5th and 6th, I'm in Chicago at the Den Theater, and then at Yellow and Company in Mahomet, Illinois, which is a little south of there, I think near Springfield. And then in January, San Diego, Vienna, Virginia, which is DC suburbs near you, and Roanoke, Virginia, where I'm from, and I get a book and stuff, and another book out soon. And then I'm also on Comics Unleashed on CBS sometime late November. Check your local listings.
Does anyone know what that is? No, the Vienna show I'm going to try to make, and the Yellow and Company show you're doing with Nick Cobb, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so check out your other podcast, Nick Cobb. Yeah. No. What's it called?
Connor vs. Cobb. And do me a favor, go ahead and buy those tickets. Buy some advance tickets to the Vienna show.
There you go. See you guys next time. Thanks. Music for Baggage provided by Quincy Ledbetter. You can find his stuff at qledbetter.com. Graphics provided by Megan Weaver. You can find her at meganweaverart.com. Special thanks to our premium members for their support. You can become a premium member by clicking subscribe in your Apple Podcast app, or by visiting thebaggagepodcast.com/support to sign up or to gift a membership to someone. A percentage of all proceeds go to charity. If you have any questions, comments, or a good story to share, please email us at thebaggagepodcast@gmail.com.